My dad and I set up a darkroom in our house in Newcastle. I was a teenager, and his passion for photography and the visual arts became a big part of my life too. I moved to Sydney at age 18 to pursue a career in photography, and I began working full-time in a photography studio shortly after that. Whilst I have always been riding bikes, whether it be for a quick surf check in Newey or commuting through the inner west of Sydney, it was a 5-month cycling trip to Europe with Miriam, my fiancée at the time, which cemented our love for bikes. Bike touring and camping around Europe, it was when I first dabbled in content creation with my blog, The Leather Saddle. It wasn't an instant transition to becoming a globe-trotting cycling photographer, but the trip and the blog inspired the next few years of developing as a road cyclist and a cycling photographer. It wasn't long before I was drawn back to Europe, with Miriam, camera in hand, and a road bike as well. While standing on the roadside of the Tour de France, watching photographers zoom by on motorbikes, I began to wonder what life on the road as a cycling photographer could look like. The next few years flew by with an exhibition of images from my trip to the Tour de France, my first cycling commission for a well-known brand at the Giro d'Italia, and marrying Miriam at the beginning of 2014. This may sound like a fairy tale story, but things took a backward step when I received a life-changing diagnosis. I'd been pushing myself hard on the bike and began to notice I couldn't quite reach my training peak. As well as the fatigue, I noticed a lump in my collarbone and a persistent cough. These symptoms seemed a little too familiar to my dad, a haematologist. He urged me to have the lump biopsied and made quick work of getting the diagnosis. I had stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma, which has spread from my collarbone into my lungs and my esophagus. Life was put on hold for the next 6 months as I cancelled my trip to the Volta a España and underwent chemotherapy. I tackled the difficulty of hair loss by organising a charity event, publicly shaving my beard and hair and raising more than $25,000 for the Leukemia Foundation. Throughout my entire treatment, cycling was just as important for my mental state as chemotherapy was for my body. During this time, in a quarantine bubble of hand sanitizer, close hospital proximity, I began to dream of escape and wide open places, planning a Tasmanian gravel adventure. A lot changed once I got better. I went on my gravel adventure, left the photo studio, and began shooting cycling full-time, spending 3 months overseas, capturing the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France. After many trips to Europe and more than 200 days away from home each year, the call to live in Tasmania seemed to grow louder and louder. With a desire to own our own home, and Miriam receiving a job offer in her hometown Hobart, we decided to leave the big smoke behind for a Tassie tree change. It was daunting to leave Bondi for the bush, the tarmac for the trails, but the move has made way for a whole new chapter of Beardy McBeard, the gardener, homemaker, off-road rider, and now father to Olive. Tassie is such an amazing environment. I found myself exploring these wild places on endless gravel loops and steep mountain bike trails that are just minutes from my door. There is something different about living in a city like Hobart. The relaxed pace of life and being surrounded by nature is so inspiring. It's such a joy to be able to share the world with the next generation and see the excitement of simple things life can bring. Throughout my life, I've been able to follow my passions of photography, cycling, and travel, and have been lucky enough to convert them into a fulfilling career. My passion for bikes has given me so much and taken me so far. Now, with my illness behind me, I want to help my daughter find her passions in our hometown, Hobart, or wherever they may take her.